well, was Vance wished out before the president, whatever? If you'll notice, for whatever reason, it appeared that almost all of the security details were staged on that side of the stage. So the Vance detail raced out first, grabbed him, and then not only the security detail, but you saw paramilitary forces aiming their weapons out at the audience, protecting the president. One guy actually leapfrogged the table in the front, if you saw that, and kind of straddling it, because at this juncture, of course, the gunman hadn't, and he never did, thankfully, get inside the hall, but people had no idea whether there might be more than one. So, a lot of the details are yet to come out. The security protocols, as you know, are being reviewed as of today. And this guy's already been charged, 3 different charges, one of them with attempt to assassinate the president of the United States. So here we go.
This is interesting, just from K. Wayne. How the gunman came down a stairwell that was out of public view doesn't make sense. Secret Service should have known about that stairwell and had it covered. Secret Service seems lax when it comes to Trump's security. That's the last part, which is sort of the conclusion. I don't know about whether it's Trump's security that they're lax about, but it does appear that there's some holes in the Secret Service dragnet around so many of these things. And it's even suggested, last thing, that the general kind of White House cloak of security that has provided Trump wasn't really in effect here for whatever reason. They could have put it in effect, but it wasn't in effect on the kind of level that you'd find, for example, around like White House events.
Yeah. Well, Trump himself has been exceptionally complimentary of law enforcement and security around him. It's quite remarkable in many ways. But he mentioned afterwards, at the presser that he did after the event, that, hey, there was a mistake at Butler. That guy should never have been on the rooftop, and he was taken out from 400 yards with a single bullet to the forehead. All of that was true. And then, of course, the incident down at the golf course in Florida, how did that guy end up in the bushes, with a clear line of sight to those golf holes? A lot of people had questions about why wasn't that security perimeter extended further out. And now you make an important point, Mark. This is going to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb, but you just got to believe, I don't care whether it's Trump or the next president, whether they're Republican or Democrat, it sure seems like things need to be tightened up. It doesn't matter where the president is these days, because, Mark, I'll end with this, people can say stage, whatever, political violence, right, left. There's been international actors who've made no bones about the fact that they're going after the president of the United States, right? I mean, it's not even, and especially in light of the events in Iran and the leadership that was taken out there by the Israelis. I mean, I think people need to understand, we're in a different day now, and 5 years from now, it could be a Democratic president. I don't want to see any of this happen to anybody.
The one thing I would say, though, Gary, for the fine-tooth comb part of this, is there's been a lot that's gone down here, and I don't see a lot of heads rolling over this. In fact, they sort of quietly closed the investigation on the Butler assassination, which, of course, only fueled the conspiracy theorists more. I mean, you guys don't, this is Trump who was dining out on that whole Butler thing. He had the bandage on his ear, and then they put out, like, shoes with the picture of him with his fist up and the American flag behind him, and then there's merch around it, and it was crazy. And then all of a sudden, it just evaporates and we don't hear about it anymore, and they quietly close the investigation. And it was suggested, again, against that backdrop, that there must have been something funky going on there, and no one lost their job over this in any kind of large way.
Yeah, I think there's a real, it is not uncommon, Mark, as you know, inside law enforcement circles to close the ranks, right? And to not point fingers. Part of the complication, if you remember, at Butler was who was actually, what level of security is responsible, for example, for that perimeter, that rooftop. And there was a lot of early debate that it was the state folks that, that should have been the Pennsylvania people or even local law enforcement. This is part of the challenge when these events happen, is you have multiple layers of security. Yes, Secret Service around the president, but you've got other federal law enforcement. You've got state law enforcement resources. You've got local law enforcement resources. And the coordination of those and the clarity about who's going to cover what and what's going to happen And, like you talked about, an individual stairwell. I mean, these questions go clear back to the Bobby Kennedy assassination. How did somebody get into the kitchen of the hotel in Los Angeles and get that kind of access to Robert F. Kennedy? I mean, as you know, these kind of questions go all the time. Law enforcement people quietly will tell you, look, we're never going to have 100% perimeter. Just forget that. But I will just end with this. One change is, Mark, that has been happened after Butler. There are no more outdoor events for this presidency. I mean, they moved him indoors. And what happened on Saturday night was sort of a wake-up call. Hey, even some of our indoor venues don't appear to be as secure as we hoped.
Yeah, and then you had, as you suggested, kind of this room full of luminaries when it comes to journalism and politics. And so you'd think that would be, again, a pretty secure environment. So we'll, again, to be continued. Sadly, this political violence doesn't just exist, as you point out, at the presidential level. They're not just these attempts on President Trump and his cabinet members, and it's not just limited to Washington. You see it across the board, state legislatures, judges now being threatened. So it's a scary time in America, in my judgment. I want to pivot to, I'll get to the war in a bit, but I want to pivot quickly to Florida, because they are going to enter this redistricting war ahead of the 2026 election. And, this is an effort on the part of Ron DeSantis to redraw the lines in Florida so that they can in some way favor GOP in overall opportunities to take power, regain power, or hold power in Washington. Speak to this, and speak to also the way in which Virginia, they voted for the redistricting, but now the judges put it on pause.
Yeah, well, we all know where this started, in the Lone Star State, when Texas did it first. And then California, as people know famously, did it through our ballot measure here last fall, added 5 Democratic-leaning seats at the expense of the GOP. And if you net out the math, Mark, of all this going down, the gerrymandering river here, most analysts believe right now Democrats have a +1 opportunity. And I like the way you use that word. People need to understand there's no guarantee these seats are going to be flipped, but they're more leaning the opposite direction than they were before. So right now it's a +1. That's why the pressure now on Florida. The special session of the Florida legislature is supposed to meet tomorrow to consider this. They have to move quickly. I mean, that's the reality of it. Here we are almost at May by this weekend. And, so these districts have to be put in place. We're going to see what happens in Virginia. You rightly point out that's been court challenged, as each one of these have, by the way. The Texas effort, the California effort, every one of these, tomorrow's in Florida will be as well. And, see which one. All of them have survived, by the way, so far, interestingly. So we don't have any early indications that Virginia's effort will be thrown out. But it's important for people to know it's particular to each state and each measure. I mean, some are citizen initiatives. Some of them are, legislative actions. Each state has its own rules governing these things. So we'll see what finally nets out here. We probably know in the next few weeks, Mark, I would guess the judiciary is going to review that Virginia case quickly. I would guess we're going to know fairly soon where the math finally on this whole gerrymander debacle finally ends up.
I would hope we know in the next few weeks, because, you at some point, the legislative strategy of killing the clock. I'm talking about the idea somehow that you can vote on the legislation, then it goes to court, and then the court maybe enjoins it for the moment, puts a pause on it, however you want to term it, then that's appealed, and this whole process takes time, and that killing of the clock can then push you past the deadline to really get this stuff done, to redraw the district, to ascertain the ballots and how they should be distributed. So this stuff better than I do. The idea somehow that you can let the courts sort of grind it out. Well, they can grind it out in some instances, but in this instance, you've got the midterms breathing down your neck.
Yeah, and Mark, you're exactly right. And here's the political pragmatic realities of it. Many of these districts, once they get redrawn, right, there's a massive reshuffling of candidates, right? Who, my district just got flipped, for example, in this area up here from Republican to Democrat. Well, that did a massive reshuffling, not only of candidates, but of political resources, right? Where are the various candidates and parties and volunteers and local and national donors, where are they going to put their resources to try to make an impact, to try to, either hang on or get control of the House, and now increasingly potentially the Senate? So this is mass political chaos when you have an uncertain playing field like we do right now.
I'm going to ask you about just the last thing on voting, and that is what's happening in California. There is a measure that will be on the ballot to require photo ID to cast a ballot. So again, we know that this has traditionally been a conservative push, but it is going to be on the California ballot. And I'm wondering, just handicap that for me in the state of California.
Yeah. Well, the early read on that was really interesting, Mark. Even when it was before it was circulating, when they did focus groups and then did a little bit of formal polling as this was out in the field gathering signatures, there is remarkably widespread support for that ballot measure. I mean, some people are citing as much as 70 or 80%, crossing party lines, strong, you might expect strong support amongst the GOP, but strong support, more than majority support by far amongst independents, and even to some degree amongst certain Democrats. So right now, that looks to be in really strong polling shape. But you can imagine that, and there's going to be other things. By the way, the California billionaire tax, if people have heard about that, that looks like it's also going to make it on the ballot. I say that, Mark, because those kinds of things can really drive turnout and have a major impact on everything from the California governor's race clear down to the House races.
Such a great call. Such a great call. The turnout notion is such an important one. So now let me get you to Iran and the state of the war. Trump essentially scrapping these peace talks, canceled his envoys' visits due to too much travel and expense. I don't know. It seems like it's a crowd that's not too worried about spending money, but all right, he noted expense as well. And he basically pulled his crew back. Tony, you have his comments on it. He was kind of in one of those gang reporter situations. Oh, here he is. I just canceled the trip of my representatives going to Islamabad, Pakistan to meet with the Iranians. Too much time wasted on traveling, too much work. Besides which, there is tremendous infighting and confusion within their leadership, in quotes. Nobody knows who's in charge, including them. Also, we have all the cards. They have none. If they want to talk, all they have to do is call President Donald J. Trump. Assess this for me.
Well, I think this is classic negotiations. I mean, if you study international political negotiations, this posturing, the sending of delegations and not sending them, the exchange back and forth is saying they're not serious, saying we're gonna do this, all the threats of the Hormuz open, closed, bombings, invasions. I mean, this is classic posturing. What popped into my mind, Mark, as you were reciting some of that, is perhaps one of the most famous examples of all time, and that's Ronald Reagan in his famous Reykjavik, Iceland, walking out of the meeting with Mikhail Gorbachev, saying, "You're not serious about the START treaty. We're not going to accept this, and I'm gone." And literally walked out, went home. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, nuclear weapons, this is the most important thing we could possibly be talking about. You're walking away from a potential deal." Well, they ended up getting, as you know, a quite groundbreaking, history-changing deal in the end. So this is not uncommon. I see it right now, Mark, as a lot of sort of your classic negotiating posturing. The one question, Mark, that remains, and you and I have talked about this briefly before Trump references it, is you got to know who you're dealing with, right? Who are the decision makers right now in Iran who, even if we cut a deal and put signatures on it, are going to follow it, right? This is one of the big challenges right now, is the lack of clarity. Is it the RRGC? Is it civilian leadership? Is it some combination? Are they more radical than they were before or not? That right now is one of the biggest challenges.
I'm going to be talking more about this in the minutes ahead because Europe and the world community is definitely changing their posture toward the U.S. in many ways, and the war is just one component. But I did want to mention this, Gary, that Iran is offering to end the chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz without addressing its nuclear program. This is according to two regional officials. It comes on the, of course, as we mentioned that the talks are off, but the country's foreign minister made a visit to Russia, saying it was an opportunity to consult with Moscow regarding the war against Israel and the United States. Iran also wants the U.S. to end its blockade of the country as part of its proposal. Again, this is all from these two regional officials who are commenting and who spoke on the condition of anonymity, etc. But the new proposal passed to the United States by Pakistan likely won't be supported by the U.S., of course, who wants to end the atomic program as part of an overall deal. And it nonetheless suggests that they're ready to open the strait on their end, but then again, not make any part of the deal laying off the nuclear program.
Yeah.
This sort of, it's a snapshot of where the negotiations are, I guess.
Yeah, to me, it's just one more day of posturing by one side or the other, Mark. It's, you know, that was transmitted apparently to the White House this morning or late last night. There's been some conversations about that apparently this morning, some meetings about it in the White House, but they're not going to take this proposal seriously. I mean, Iran, you rightly point out, Mark, apparently Iran has taken off the table any conversations of ending their nuclear program. And that just means it's a non-starter. I mean, that is not even going to be seriously considered. Their leverage point, of course, is the strait. That's what they're trying to hold over the U.S.'s head and the international community. But there's going to be nobody, seriously, our NATO allies, nobody's going to say, oh, yeah, that would be a good deal. Let him continue the nuclear program to open the strait. That's just not going to happen.
An indictment unfolded this week against a U.S. Army Special Forces soldier, Gary. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. It's wild. It's kind of a sign of the times where you can, bet on these various the poly market or related sites on predictions of all sorts. And this Special Forces soldier is accused of using his insider knowledge of the clandestine military operation to capture Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan leader, in January, to get more than $400,000 in profits. Gannon Ken Van Dyke, 38, stationed at Fort Bragg, part of the team that planned and carried out the pre-dawn raid in Caracas, Venezuela earlier this year. That resulted, of course, in the apprehension of Maduro. And the DOJ is saying that Van Dyke was dealing with these prediction markets to the point that he was able to make $400K.
Yeah.
There has been a lot that has been talked about when it comes to these prediction markets from the standpoint of insiders at the White House as well. This is the first time one of these guys has actually been tagged and busted. What do you think
well, it's
of this new age?
I started talking about this early last week on air on the radio side. And, I'm really concerned about this so-called prediction market. I mean, the expansion of it has been crazy. It started, as you know, in the sports betting world, and now it's gone to politics. I mean, you can bet on almost anything these days. And, I hadn't even gotten to the point last week when I was talking about it was about politics, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. But the notion that you could bet on the outcome of a military operation, to me, is crazy. I mean, it puts things in a whole new light. There's temptations, obviously, this officer succumbed to them to make use of your inside information, or heaven forbid, even your participation in it. We've seen, in athletes and coaches and stuff taken to task and hauled into court because of their involvement with a sports situation. That's one thing. But you start talking about a military operation, or I was talking last week about campaigns. There's prediction markets. Who's going to win the California governor's race? Who's going to win the presidency in 2028? There are so many possibilities for nefarious actions related to that. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to drop $10 million into this side of a gubernatorial campaign, not because I'm in support of the candidate, but because I put a bet out there betting that side would win or not, or putting up a candidate just as a straw man or a straw woman to pull percentage points away from somebody else, right? And funding that campaign. Why? Maybe you want that other gubernatorial candidate to win. Maybe you don't, but you got a $5 million bet on their victory. These kind of things, Mark, I think are really concerning.
Yeah, it's a sign of a new age. I mean, when you talk about the prediction markets and crypto and sort of a dark way in which to make money based on insider information, there are a lot of moments that are concerning, and this is one of them. Speaking of moments, I'm going to share with you what happened. The president talking to Nora O'Donnell on 60 Minutes kind of loses it on her and opens up a can of Trump anger at the question related to the assassination attempt and the reading of a piece, or at least the relating of a piece of the manifesto from this alleged shooter. Go ahead, Tony.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, "Administration officials, they are targets." And he also wrote this: "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
You think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and I was
these are
never,
the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview.
The other thing that he wrote in the manifesto.
The Trump style is, unmistakable. Give me a thought about this moment as he kind of opens up a can of Trump on her.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, it wouldn't be appropriate for me today to comment on Nora or CBS. As you know, I work for that network. So I don't, there's no way I can comment on that from a specific perspective with 60 Minutes and all. It just wouldn't be appropriate for me to do that. Well, what I think, you might be getting at is, I'll be really honest with you. Conducting that interview the day after that event was quite remarkable to me. I mean, typically, a president's communication staff is not going to do something like that. So I was sort of amazed that it actually even occurred and it happened. I'll leave it for others to judge the appropriateness or not of the comments made. But I just think, I think one of the things that more generically we have to be careful of, and that is these manifestos sort of becoming living documents unto themselves, right? I mean, how many people get influenced or not influenced by that? I mean, that's, they're always released from the very, probably the most famous one with the Unabomber suspect, right? And it's important for understanding motives. I thought it was a little premature to sort of talk about that when the law enforcement people are still drilling in and honing in on what this guy's motives were. So to me, we'll see where this all ends up.
Yeah, fair enough. It's interesting, too, that you talk about, doing an interview and how the media people at the White House, it's unusual if they would somehow greenlight an interview so close to the incident. But he actually had a press conference, Donald Trump, right after the incident. I mean, that was insanely astounding to me. I mean, you have but this is a different kind of president. He lives for the camera, in the camera. It's theater. He wants to play the moment. He wants to play the performance. There's almost nothing, I think, from a policy standpoint that he doesn't want to have out there in some kind of curated media way. And he feels clearly the best person to curate anything is Donald Trump. And so I was with you. Like, I was blown away that he's having a press conference just, within an hour, maybe it was 2 hours. I think it was literally within an hour of the incident when he got back to the White House. And then, as you say, the day after. So the Norah O'Donnell thing does stand in kind of a stark contrast to what is traditional.
What I was going to say, Mark, about this presidency vis-a-vis the media, it is unprecedented. And, many of the media have loved this, as you know. I mean, almost unlimited access on every Air Force One trip. The president will come and step in the aisle and do all kinds of an impromptu mini pressers. What I've wondered, Mark, honestly, is what happens to the next White House and the next president? Because, as you know, Biden took a lot of flack for not having a lot of access to the press. But I'm just thinking, in light of the access that this White House has granted, wow, how are you going to keep up with that? I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. You're going to look like you're hiding out however you give access, because this has been unprecedented.
I'll say this, Gary, just to push back on that a little bit. This is curated access. He hasn't permitted a bunch of reporters who he views as enemies into the White House. He's pulled the credentials of any number of people who are associated with networks or outlets that have been associated with, in his view, kind of roughing him up. The Pentagon, as you know, has gotten rid of everybody who won't sign that pledge to only report things that are approved by the Pentagon. That was overruled overruled by a judge months later. So for all the transparency, I think it's very, very, very not transparent. So I don't know, but we can go around on that. I love having you in, man. Thank you for the conversation. And I'm going to talk to you on the radio today in Los Angeles. So I look forward. We'll be more about California. I want to talk about the Swalwell seat. I want to talk about the gubernatorial race. We'll get into all of that this afternoon when I talk to you on KFI.
Yeah, I look forward to that, Mark. Take care.
Gary Dietrich, everybody. Thanks. Thanks, Gary.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Gary is brought to us by the folks at Remax Gold and more specifically Bill Campbell there, who is a great professional, been with us now, sponsoring Gary's segment for over a year now, I think. 530-448-7474 is how you can reach Bill at Remax Gold if you're relocating into or from Northern California. We have many Northern California listeners and viewers. Right on. You need a highly respected real estate professional. Bill Campbell is your guy. Remax Gold, 530-448-7474. You can text him. You can call him, 530-448-7474. Bill Campbell, Remax Gold.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.